Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy bracing for a crucial debt ceiling vote. So here's the big day. It is expected to happen, I believe, around 2 this afternoon. The House Rules Committee voting to advance the bill last night by a vote of 7-6. So now, again, it's past that hurdle. It moves to the House. But some conservatives and even liberals have said they won't even vote for it.
There's a reason our Democrat colleagues support this. There's a reason that Mitt Romney supports this. There's a reason that Bill Kristol supports this.
$1 trillion is $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States. So at $31.4 trillion, you're talking about every one of us walking around with a $250,000 extra mortgage. How could you more successfully kneecap any Republican president than to take that issue out of his or her hands?
While you were celebrating Memorial Day, this town was cutting another crap deal that's going to put you more in debt with no real changes whatsoever.
So you hear pushback from Republicans there, but Democrats, some of them are also opposed. Washington State Democratic Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal said this regarding student loan debt provisions in part, quote, "We're very concerned about this. Our belief, there needs to be some time to at least extend the pause so the administration can get their other debt repayment plans up and running so people aren't thrown into this limbo." And here's what New York Democratic Congresswoman Jamal Bowman had to say.
But one of the major concerns is on non-defense discretionary spending. While the defense budget continues to go up, our ability to feed our children goes down. Our ability to educate our children goes down. Our ability for workforce development goes down. And our ability to meet the complex needs of the most vulnerable Americans goes down.
Making its point there, and several points, in fact. So members of both parties with hesitations again on this bill. It appears it's going to be passed. You typically see bills go through and it's by party lines. This is not that way. You have Democrats filing behind President Biden and Chuck Schumer as well when it reaches the Senate, and it will. And then you also have those going behind Kevin McCarthy in a majority fashion. But you're going to see those outliers calling for other provisions they would have liked to have seen in the bill. They would have liked some of that green energy money taken out. But the big thing here, and I wrote just a couple of things down, the conservatives were able to get some of this COVID money that was allocated inside to be allocated for other purposes. I think it was roughly $80 million, something like that. That would be moved, or billion rather. Spending is limited. So what was spent, I believe, in 2022, it is going to remain that way. That part won't be lifted. You can still spend, but it won't be more than what was spent the previous year, which is something Democrats did not want to do. But the ultimate point here is that veterans and Medicare recipients, they're fine. That was always the big question. How would those Americans be affected? You won't. And a default, that's avoided by getting this done. So really, in essence, when you look at it, it's politicians going on record. How did they vote for this bill? And that's what you'll find out today.
Well, we wanted to check in with one of those Congress members who will be casting a vote. That's Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs, who's joining National Report Now live. Sir, welcome, and thanks so much for coming on. We heard from some of your colleagues within the Freedom Caucus. We played some of the sound from a sort of presser yesterday. Wanted to ask, where do you stand when it comes to this plan to raise the debt ceiling?
Well, I'm a hard no. I'll be voting no. And, I could just elaborate on a lot of reasons, but let's think of this one. They claim they're going to get $130 billion a year in savings for 10 years. And in a 2-year period of time, they're going to raise the national debt by $4 trillion. So when you go year to year, heads up, you save $130 billion. And that's if I assume that they're telling the truth, which that's a dubious thing, because I know how they're basing that. And they're going to instead increase your national debt by $2 trillion per year. That is not a win.
Do you worry about the fracture within the party, where there are obviously Republicans on board with this, many colleagues of your own, and then those that aren't? As you said, you would be a no vote on this. Do you worry about how that showcases the Republican Party for this vote?
I'm much less worried about that than the fact that Mr. McCarthy, the Speaker, is basically negotiated to give the Democrats substantially what they want. You played two outliers, but if this thing gets fewer than 100 to 150 Democrats voting on it today, I'll be stunned. I believe they're going to have 100 to 150 Democrats. I've been talking to Democrats. They're voting for this because they've read the bill and they know that they're protected, and the Republicans got basically nothing out of this.
Well, we heard just the other day from Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, to your point, sir. He said he's on board with what the president and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy were able to negotiate. But if you're a no on this effort here, what would you need to see to be a yes when it comes to preventing the U.S. defaulting on its debts and all the sort of controversy that could come with it?
Yeah, well, that's bogus. Okay, so first of all, I introduced legislation to provide a short-term rescission, so you'd have $100 billion. That would push you out probably to late July, early August, without a default on the debt. The second thing is, June is the biggest income month outside of April. And so we know that the X date, which Janet Yellen has given us 7 different X dates. So she managed to find an X date and extend this X date because she knew that there would be a vote on this because there was a deal cut. So the reality is the threat of default is not a real threat because, first of all, there were rescission dollars available to rescind. Second of all, if there really was that, then why are we seeing no curb on travel? Why is the administration continue to push hundreds of billions of dollars of grant money out the door? And so they've concocted a narrative to push this thing through. There were remedies. I introduced legislation to solve these issues, but our leadership team wasn't really interested in those resolutions. Instead, they negotiated with the president to give us a $4 trillion debt ceiling increase over about a 20-month period.
Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona joining us live. He is a no vote on that, and the vote scheduled to happen this afternoon. Congressman, we appreciate you taking the time for the viewers today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You got it.